Annonce faite hier soir en marge du sommet des 27 qui se tient par visioconférence depuis hier, avec deux projets pour la France, un futur pass sanitaire et deuxième projet, celui-là pour l'Union européenne, un certificat vaccinal, deux principes différents à Bruxelles pour France Info. Angélique Bois.
Il faut distinguer les deux dispositifs à l'échelle de la France, tout d'abord.
Nous devons préparer, organiser la réouverture des structures quand ce sera possible. Musées, les salles de spectacle, les restaurants, les lieux de convivialité, les festivals évidemment.
Et pour y accéder, ce pass serait
conversation. Every time I mention Bernice, he'd kind of look up and growl at me. I got sick of it. I put on my coat and started.
Regardez aussi si vous avez été vacciné.
Mais pas question non plus d'un.
All right, so does Tom and Jerry live up to everything it needs to?
Well, I mean, they wouldn't screen it for.
Mais il pourrait à terme contenir une certification médicale commune utile cette fois à l'échelle de l'Europe. Certification qui pourrait faciliter les voyages sans pour autant, insiste Emmanuel Macron, exclure là encore les...
Vous voyagez avec qui? Pourquoi?
Vous ne pouvez pas circuler d'une région, vous n'avez pas le certificat de vaccination.
Une position partagée par l'Allemagne, mais qui fait encore débat avec les pays qui veulent sauver leur saison touristique. Bruxelles, Angélique Bois, France Info.
8h08 en France, une nouvelle attaque contre un commissariat. Il y en a eu plusieurs ces derniers mois. Cette fois dans le Val d'Oise, à Sarcelles, le commissariat pris pour cible par une trentaine de personnes hier soir. Bonjour Laura Lavenne.
Bonjour à tous.
Il est 19h30 quand le bâtiment est visé par les premiers tirs, des tirs de mortier de feu d'artifice.
30 minutes de feu d'artifice lancés à distance par des jeunes qui se trouvent à proximité du commissariat. Ils sont cachés dans le quartier et sporadiquement, ils jettent aussi des projectiles, des pierres sans faire ni dégâts ni blessés. 3 jeunes sont finalement interpellés par des policiers en patrouille et placés en garde à vue. Alors ce n'est pas la première fois qu'un commissariat est pris pour cible en France, même procédé, même fait en janvier à Grand-Quevilly, près de Rouen, pareil en novembre à Cahors dans le Lot. Enfin, plus emblématique, l'attaque du commissariat de Champigny-sur-Marne, c'était en octobre dernier. À l'époque, la scène est filmée, diffusée en masse sur les réseaux sociaux. Et 2 jours plus tard, c'est toute la profession qui se mobilise, des policiers réunis devant leur commissariat pour dénoncer des attaques de plus en plus fréquentes.
Laura Lavenne et le football, avec la fin de parcours des clubs français en Ligue Europa, Lille, à nouveau battu, est éliminé en 16e de finale après sa défaite 2-1 sur la pelouse de l'Ajax Amsterdam. Merci Jean-Christophe Martin pour l'info. La météo, Christine Pénial, les nuages sont de retour.
Ben oui, ils sont arrivés hier en Bretagne, ils circulent sur la France, ils donnent quelques pluies autour de la Bourgogne. On a de la douceur qui reste en place dans le sud, 18 degrés à Marseille, mais ça y est, dans le nord ça baisse, 11 degrés seulement à Lille.
La puce, tu sais où est mon appareil photo? Dans mon placard. Mais attention, il y a toutes mes affaires dedans.
Il est temps d'organiser votre intérieur. Pour retrouver nos solutions de rangement sur IKEA.fr et jusqu'au 28 février, profitez de notre service cliquez et emportez adapté et sans contact, gratuit à partir de 100 € d'achat. Plus d'informations sur IKEA.fr.
Pour Alain,
les 5 jours 5G Orange vont commencer.
Et pourtant,
pas besoin de 5 jours pour choisir un téléphone 5G, surtout à ce prix.
C'est tout Alain ça. La vitesse, c'est son plaisir. Et ce nouveau téléphone à prix réduit,
il fait bien plaisir.
Du 25 février au 1er mars, pendant les 5 jours 5G Orange, profitez de remises importantes en boutique sur une sélection de téléphones 5G. Vous rapprochez de l'essentiel. Orange. 5G uniquement en zone déployée avec offre compatible. Débit max théorique variable selon fréquence. Couverture détaillée sur réseau.orange.fr. Conditions en boutique Orange.
France Info, 7h, 9h30. Laura Sénéchal.
À suivre sur France Info, une bonne nouvelle sur le front du coronavirus. La vaccination commence à porter ses fruits chez les seniors. On verra ça avec la spécialiste santé de France Info. 8h10, le fil info, Pauline Renoir.
Le Covid gagne du terrain dans une vingtaine de départements, au nord, à l'est, dans le sud-est. Il y aura des restrictions dès le week-end du 6 mars s'il n'y a pas d'amélioration. Le taux d'incidence dépasse les 250 cas pour 100 000 habitants. Pas de sursis pour le littoral niçois et Dunkerque. Les habitants confinent ce soir jusqu'à lundi matin. Toutes les sorties sont interdites, sauf motif impérieux. Un confinement semblable à celui de l'automne dernier, ça ne servirait à rien. La réaction sur France Info d'Éric Coquerel, député de Seine-Saint-Denis. Il n'est pas d'accord avec la proposition de la mairie de Paris, confiner toute la région pendant 3 semaines. Rien n'est décidé, ni l'État ni les autorités sanitaires n'ont donné leur avis. Les États-Unis accélèrent leur campagne de vaccination, 50 millions de doses administrées en seulement 1 mois. 3 individus en garde à vue après une bagarre en Essonne. personnes. La troisième en moins d'une semaine, un jeune est blessé. La police est intervenue pour empêcher un autre affrontement à Savigny-sur-Orge. La défaite du LOSC face à l'Ajax Amsterdam, 16e de finale retour de la Ligue Europa. Les Lillois ont perdu 2-1.
C'est peut-être lent, mais c'est efficace. La campagne de vaccination, toujours tributaire des livraisons, 2 700 000 premières doses injectées, bientôt 1,5 million de secondes doses. Bonjour Solène Lehen.
Bonjour.
Spécialiste santé de France Info. La bonne nouvelle, c'est que cette vaccination, elle commence à fonctionner.
Oui, 80% des résidents d'EHPAD ont été vaccinés, ont reçu au moins une dose de vaccin, soit la quasi-totalité des volontaires. Et dans le même temps, les épidémiologistes remarquent que les contaminations de personnes âgées baissent, tout comme l'âge des malades en réanimation. Cela montre que ça y est, il commence à y avoir un effet vaccination, un effet protection chez les plus âgés. Pour une autre catégorie prioritaire, les plus de 75 ans qui peuvent être vaccinés dans les centres de vaccination, beaucoup n'ont pas encore réussi à obtenir un rendez-vous. Mais malgré tout, la vaccination progresse. Un quart des plus de 75 ans ont reçu au moins une dose, annonce le gouvernement.
Et selon le ministre de la Santé, tous les plus de 50 ans auront reçu une proposition d'injection d'ici le 15 mai.
Oui, et il a insisté sur les 65-74 ans qui, pas de chance, eux, sont dans un trou de vaccination, si j'ose dire, encore trop jeunes et pas encore prioritaires pour recevoir les vaccins Pfizer et Moderna, et trop vieux pour le vaccin AstraZeneca, vaccin jusqu'alors pas suffisamment testé sur les plus de 65 ans, donc déconseillé. Eh bien, ces Français âgés de 65 à 74 ans ont enfin un horizon. Ils pourront accéder à la vaccination à partir de début avril, dans un peu plus d'un mois, avec les vaccins Pfizer et Moderna, voire avec le vaccin AstraZeneca, puisque des études commencent à montrer qu'il semblerait efficace sur les plus de 65 ans. Si c'est confirmé, les 65-74 ans pourraient alors même être vaccinés avec des doses d'AstraZeneca par leur...
Which is itself an unwritten agreement. So I think it is important that ceasefire agreement between India and Pakistan is enshrined in a properly written down agreement with the do's and don'ts, the principle governing the ceasefire, all of this clearly laid out. If you don't do that, there is a possibility of miscommunication, there's a possibility of lack of clarity, which could again lead to potential violations of the ceasefire.
Happy Mon Jacob, thank you very much for joining us this morning, Professor. And he is Professor of Diplomacy and Disarmament at Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi.
Today on the BBC World Service, let's take you to the United States and the politically charged issue of the detention of migrant children. An emergency facility for migrant children reopened this week. It's the Carrizo Springs facility in Texas. Government officials say the camp is needed because of the COVID pandemic, places for migrant children have had to cut capacity by nearly half. At the same time, the number of unaccompanied children crossing the border from Mexico has been rising. But immigration lawyers and advocates question the move back to the Trump-era facility that was the source of considerable protests and controversy. One of those is Linda Brandmiller, a San Antonio-based immigration lawyer who represents unaccompanied minors.
It's very disappointing that the current administration is taking steps backwards. Carrizo Springs failed in 2019 for a reason. It is morally reprehensible, fiscally irresponsible, and does not legally comply with the way that we're supposed to be treating unaccompanied minor children.
In what sense?
Well, in 1997, there was a settlement agreement that went to the Supreme Court called the Flores Settlement Agreement, which outlines exactly how children are supposed to be treated in detention facilities. First, the location should be at an established facility, of which there are a couple hundred in the United States, which are state licensed for oversight purposes. And there's also a maximum amount of time that a child is supposed to spend in detention. So the creation of these influx centers in the middle of nowhere, by the way, with no access to anybody, let alone advocates and legal counsel, it does not meet that criteria because they're not state licensed. These children, they're not coming from Customs and Border Protection offices. They are being transported from already established facilities where bed space is available. So it's unnecessary.
The authorities say that because of the pandemic, they simply don't have much choice. They need a facility like this to give them more beds, more space, more options.
Well, at the risk of swearing on your station, I'm going to say hockey pucks. even COVID is not an excuse for this. Even under COVID, there are beds available. And so there is, again, no reason to create this influx center. And if it is done in anticipation of an influx, it's premature at best.
Why do you think it is being done then? Are the necessary sort of steps to rethink the way this whole process happens just not being done?
Correct. That is partly what saddens me, because we've learned it under several administrations. And so the Biden administration can in no way say that they did not know that the exact location everybody was outraged about under the Trump administration is now again being reopened. And I understand there's also talk about reopening the Homestead site in Florida, which was closed amid huge controversy and problems with them being non-compliant in contracting. There are ways to fix this. It is not to create a new level of care in the middle of nowhere for these children at an exorbitant cost.
So what would your solution be? What would you do differently?
Well, first of all, we should, at the very least, go back to the Flores Settlement Agreement, comply with those minimum requirements. And it's not a perfect system, but at least there is some oversight and the facilities are monitored and they have reporting requirements, et cetera. But I would also suggest that this be expanded to include some state oversight, not just licensure, because this system just can't seem to police itself. The way that it's supposed to work, I describe it as a revolving door. If you cannot reunify the child fast enough as new children enter the country, then a backlog is created, but it is fixable. The last thing that I would suggest is to have, independent of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and again under state oversight, proper screening for these children, legal screening within, a day or two of them arriving, so that their cases can get started no matter where they are located.
That is Linda Brandmiller, an immigration lawyer based in San Antonio, Texas. You're listening to Newsday on the BBC World Service with Bola and James. I'll give you a couple of our headlines right now. The United States says its warplanes have attacked Iranian-backed militia positions on Syria's border with Iraq. Reports say 17 people were killed. As you've been hearing on Newsday, opposition activists in Armenia have occupied the main street in the capital, Yerevan, joining army generals in calling for the Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan, to resign. A BBC investigation has found that hundreds of people are using social media to sell illegally occupied land in the Amazon rainforest. And there's some breaking news out of Nigeria too. Reports from Zamfara State say gunmen have abducted hundreds of girls from their secondary school in the early hours, and a parent and teacher who was in the school during the attack has told the BBC more than 300 students are so far believed to have been kidnapped. We will go live to Nigeria in about 10 or 15 minutes' time to get an update on that story.
Yes, indeed we will. Now, though, let's get the latest sports headlines from James Gregg.
The Olympic 800 metres champion, Caster Semenya, will be appealing to the European Court of Human Rights against the restriction of testosterone levels in female runners. Semenya isn't allowed to compete in events between 400 metres and a mile without taking testosterone-reducing drugs. And that comes after a ruling that was made back in 2019 by world governing body World Athletics. The lineup for the last 16 in European football's second-tier competition, the Europa League, is complete. English Premier League sides Arsenal and Manchester United managed to join Tottenham in the last 16, but Leicester were knocked out by Slavia Prague. Some big names, Villarreal, Milan, Olympiacos, Ajax, they're all through to the last 16 last night. The LA Clippers lost to Memphis in the NBA. They're second in the Western Conference. The 76ers are top of the East after they beat the Dallas Mavericks. And the former coach of the US women's gymnastics team, John Geddert, has killed himself just hours after being charged with human trafficking and criminal sexual assault. Big story, that one. I'm back in 30 minutes' time with more sport here on Newsday.
Thanks very much, James.
Let's get some business news now. We're going to be talking about India's economy under pressure due to the pandemic, as with so many places around the world, of course. Andrew Wood is joining us from our Hong Kong business desk to tell us more.
Yes, I think it's no surprise that India, like so many countries, had a really awful time economically last year, but the latest figures due out in about 4.5 hours' time will give us a hint as to how last year ended. Joining us now from Delhi is M.K. Venu. He's a writer on economics and politics and founding editor of The Wire. Good morning to you, Mr. Venu. What do you think these figures today are going to tell us about how, well, the prospects, how 2020 ended and the prospects for 2021?
So India, as you know, had one of the harshest lockdowns anywhere in the world, and therefore, in the first quarter of our financial year, which is April, May, June, we had a negative GDP growth of 24%. So
in other words, the economy shrank by 24%. Negative economic growth. The economy shrank by a quarter, nearly.
Yeah, in the first quarter of our financial year that we follow, April to April, and then by and by, as the economy opened, it started improving. There's a forecast of 7.7% by the central bank, although independent economists still believe that we'll be negative 10%. But the latest quarter shows a positive growth of a little over 1%. That's largely because there is a bounce back in the manufacturing and some sectors of the economy. However, the worrisome aspect is India is still about 55% services economy led. Our GDP is led by services, 55%, and the services economy, which is more kind of consumer facing, like tourism, trade, transport, hotels, etc., is still not showing any signs of coming back. So people are talking about a K-shaped recovery. Some sectors are going up, but many others going down. And as a result, employment prospects are still very, very weak. We are still, even before the pandemic, India had seen about the 45-year high in unemployment rate. So that problem still persists. Incomes have been, wages have been smashed. All the corporate balance sheets, the listed companies are doing well, which is what is reflecting this pickup in the GDP growth, right? So that is what
Mr. Venu, thanks very much for joining us from Delhi, talking about the Indian economic figures coming out soon. Thanks for joining us on Newsday.
Thanks as always to Andrew Woods.
Now, BBC investigation has revealed that organised groups are selling chunks of the Amazon rainforest on Facebook. There are hundreds of ads offering plots of Brazilian land inside the world's largest rainforest, some within protected indigenous reserves. Well, with deforestation in the region reaches its highest rate in a decade after President Jair Bolsonaro took power in 2018, the country and the planet can ill afford to lose further trees. Well, the BBC's João Fellet reports from the Brazilian state of Rondônia.
Armed with just a bow and arrow, Bitate and his friends are patrolling the jungle. They are on the lookout for anyone trying to invade and occupy land in their tribe's reserve. The indigenous Urueuauau community has been battling these so-called land grabbers for decades.
A gente sabe que é muito arriscado esse trabalho, mas mesmo assim a gente está lá, protegendo.
We know this job is very risky, but we are protecting our land, protecting what the elders left to us. Land grabbers often sell the land to people who cut down the trees and convert it to farmland. For Bitate's community, it's a threat to their way of life. I show Bitate a post on Facebook advertising for sale a plot of land inside his reserve.
Nunca imaginei que isso poderia estar acontecendo, né? Talvez eles venderiam em outros lugares.
I never imagined that this could be happening. Maybe selling in other places, but not on Facebook. Yes, this is a lack of respect towards the indigenous people. Not only in my land, but in all of Brazil. Land invasions happen with or without Facebook. But Facebook makes it easier than ever for sellers to find buyers. We started this investigation by typing some words like forest into Facebook, and there were hundreds of ads. Very few sellers have documents that prove they own the land. So working with an undercover agent, we speak to 4 people trying to sell land on Facebook. E aí, cara, como é que foi? After the most recent meeting, I asked the agent how it went. He tells me it was very tense. And he says the man was very suspicious. The guy he's talking about is the man selling land in Bitates Reserve. His name is Alvin Alves, and he brought lots of official-looking documents, but not a legal land title. One of the documents he has shows he's a member of the Curupira Association. This is an organization that the federal police has labeled as a criminal group that steals indigenous land. As Alvin explains, these associations then lobby politicians in the capital Brasilia to grant the stolen lands to their members.
If this is not sorted out by Bolsonaro, it won't be solved.
Alvin told us one of the politicians helping him was a congressman, a man called Coronel Crisóstomo. I asked him if he knew the Curupira Association.
They came to me to see what could be done. They came to me, I brought them to the appropriate bodies.
But did he know that Alvin's group was occupying indigenous land?
No. No. I was never aware that they were occupying indigenous areas.
And that the land was illegally acquired?
I didn't know. They didn't tell me. If they invaded it, they don't have my support anymore.
Back in the Uruguay Reserve, the patrol has been uneventful. But they know their fight isn't over. Facebook says their policies require buyers and sellers to comply with laws and regulations, and they stand ready to work with local authorities. The BBC contacted Mr. Alves for his response, but he declined to comment. As long as the authorities fail to act, the forest gets closer to what scientists fear could be a point of no return.
The BBC show Philip there, and if you go to our BBC World Service pages online, you can see more of that report, including pictures and more from those who've been selling these plots online.
This is the BBC World Service, asking a globally important question. Is America back?
Well, yes, it is back, because instead of the world's policeman, which is to say a force for law and order, America was behaving under Trump as the world's opportunist.
We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's.
America's reputation has undoubtedly suffered, both from its isolationism in the last 4 years.
The change to give the toy a modern makeover amid a broader push to more inclusivity in the toy industry. But in a tweet later that afternoon, Hasbro clarified that Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head characters will still live on and be sold in stores, but under the Potato Head brand. Is this going too far?
Well, I mean, it's kind of genius because they create a brand, the Potato Head, and now you have to buy two, you buy two separate ones. You buy the Mr. Potato Head set and the Mrs. Potato Head set, and then they'll probably come up with different potato heads under the Potato Head brand. But at the end of the day, it's a potato. So, throw a mustache or whatever you want. It's a potato. That's kind of how I see it. I mean, at face value, I understand why some people were like, oh, it's so stupid. But really, it's a potato.
It's a potato. I guess that when you buy Mr. Potato Head, you get the mustache and such. And when you buy Mrs. Potato Head, you get the lipstick lips and stuff like that. I would assume that that's the way it works out. When I had a potato head, it was long time ago. So, but I think they're missing amazing opportunity here. Because one of the cool things about Potato Head, if you fast forward into this sort of modern makeover idea, is if you have a Mr. Potato Head with a mustache and lipstick lips, that to me seems more life appropriate today than anything, right? Like, who says Mr. Potato Head can't be wear Mrs. Potato Head's clothes, right? You know what I'm saying?
What?
I think that I think it's kind of a missed opportunity to instead of making it gender neutral, just make it all one big bowl of whatever you want your potato head to look like.
Well, I'm kind of interested. So tomorrow, I'm going to go to Toys R Us because Laura and I in the future will be having a Lego date where we build Lego together. It's going to be awesome. But I'm going to find a potato head and a Mr. Potato Head. And I just want to see how they're marketed right now, like what's on the box and if it's really going to be any different than what it is currently. Because it could literally just be like a way to stir up some attention to the brand. Yep. But from a marketing standpoint, I think Hasbro knows what it's doing. I did see a tweet that made me laugh. Like Hasbro needs to take the word bro out of their name after this.
Oh, that is kind of funny, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the meaning of Hasbro and where it comes from. Hazard Brothers, maybe, who knows? But the, I just think that's a missed opportunity. Who cares if Mr. Potato Head wears lipstick and the dress? Then who cares, right? Let Mr. Potato Head, like, you are still allowed to be Mr. Potato Head and wear lipstick. So I think I think they're missing something. I really do. Okay, well, 877-399-9898. You can send in your text messages. Most of them that are coming in so far are dirty. Going insanely too far, says Anonymous. The only thing a potato is good for is French fries. And you got to say it like that. It's not potato head. It's potato.
Potato.
Tater head. Catherine says Barbie needs to have jeans. Barbie's comes in all kinds of different sizes, shapes, and colors now. That's a step. But, you could be right. Maybe they should come up with like a short Barbie. Like the vertically challenged Barbie, who's like 5'1" and didn't make it in modeling because she was too short.
You know, when I worked at EB Games, they had video game character Barbies, which I think is super cool. Like, it's a way to get, girls into video games. Hey, look, Lara Croft from Tomb Raider is now a Barbie. Oh, sweet. I think that's a great idea.
Good idea. Lyle says Mrs. Potato Head should have more eyes. As my mom said many years ago, she had eyes in the back of her head. That's a good mom story. Okay, are you okay? You can share your thoughts with Are You Okay? Just 877-399-9898. You're welcome to contribute anytime you'd like to the show. For this Are You Okay, though, we want to play you this particular clip completely out of context and not tell you what it is.
If you let my daughter go now, that'll be the end of it. I will not look for you. I will not pursue you. But if you don't, I will look for you. I will find you.
Last 2 months, can't quit working the claim. Tell you it's played out. Where you going? Into the cabin.
With a worried look on his face, Lee Durham threw down his pick and followed Hank into the cabin.
All right. So we're licked. I may as well admit it. It's about time. I've been afraid to face it, but it's true. Claim is played out. Well, what are we going to do about it? We're flat broke. Only one thing we can do. We have to rustle up jobs and earn enough money to get us back home. It'll sure look fine, won't it? We come up here to make our fortunes and wind up going home broke with our tails between our legs. I'll rub it in. Have to face it, that's all. Maybe you will, but I won't. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not going home broke. That's for sure. What are you going to do? We can't get any gold out of our claim, then by thunder I'll get it somewhere else. What are you driving at, eh? Joe Moline has mined over $40,000 worth of gold. He's got it stowed away in his cabin. Hey, for the love of Mike, you're not thinking of robbing him, are you? Why not? An old coot like him will never live long enough to spend 40 grand. Well, that's not the point. Robbery's a crime. It's wrong. Yeah? What about us? We work our heads off and wind up with nothing to show for it. While Joe strikes it rich. Is that fair? Oh, you've had rotten luck. I realize that, but still... Still all my eye. Suppose we were to take part of his gold. Not all of it, just part of it. Say about 10,000 at 40 grand. That would still leave him plenty. Wouldn't that be a lot fairer than the way things stand now? Well, I don't know. If you put it that way, it doesn't seem quite so bad. All right, then. How about it? Oh, no, I can't do it. We can't leave. Think what we can do with that money. See about it. We'll go to his cabin tonight after he's asleep. We know right where he keeps his gold, so it won't take long to grab a couple of pokes. Maybe he won't even wake up. That chance he keeps his gold under his bunk. Well, even if he does wake up, it'll be dark, so he won't be able to recognize us. We can under his bunk. Well, even if he does wake up, it'll be dark, so he won't be able to recognize us. We can wear handkerchiefs over our faces if it'll make you feel any better.
Oh.
What if he puts